to have felt, for sure, those moments when you feel like you can't live alone. The burden on your shoulders is too heavy. You can't accommodate the pain in your heart. You can't accommodate the disappointment in your heart. It's natural that at a certain point in life we experience this loneliness. It's too heavy. But we also know that, thank God, at some point in life we also discover that, no matter how much we feel alone, we are not. Because at that moment we will remember the people who are part of us, those people who truly participate in our lives, our closest friends, the family members with whom we have bonds. It's not enough to be relatives. We've already said that here, right? There has to be a bond. That person who comes to your heart at the moment of your pain, you know you can count on them. And what about the historical action of God, my people? When through the strength of a heart that knows how to listen to us, when through the strength of a person who knows how to be by our side in the moment of our weakness, we feel a little more encouraged to live through the difficult moment. And that's when it will be worth it. The bond that we have cultivated. We know that we have many relationships, but sometimes God gives us the grace to go beyond conventional territories. That person stops being just another acquaintance and becomes someone you trust. I never tire of saying this. The greatest wealth that we can truly have in this life, my people, is trust. You trust someone that is very precious, because trust takes away that feeling of loneliness. Trust gives us back the precious things that life takes away from us. When you know that you can count on that person, that they are faithful. Trust. It is that opening up that you make of your life. And you allow other people to come in and have authority over you. And the more we are converted, or rather, the more we have this human experience of loving and being loved, the greater the opportunity God has to act in us. For a very simple reason. God passes through the action of the other in my life. When do I have a quality relationship? I experience in my life the strength of God acting in me through those people through a piece of advice that I receive, through a wake-up call that I receive. Only those who love us will want to open our eyes so we can see what needs to be changed in us. We can only listen to the people who truly love us because of this. Only they are truly committed to our growth, to our happiness. That is why it is important for us to find out who are these people who are truly the voice of God in our lives, in our history. They are the bridges through which God brings peace. They are the bridges through which God passes and finds us. Because sometimes he even passes over the bridge, but he does not find us, you know. What? Because we prefer to value the bridge more than the one who crosses it. God comes into our lives through a word, through well-given, sensible advice, through a look, through affection, through a gesture. This is a historical action of God. Is it a miracle? It may be. But we provoke this miracle because we are the ones who have the opportunity to deepen the relationships that God is allowing us. Break out the same old thing. Enough of being known by many people, but no one's friend. If you were to think today, Father, go and think. Who are the true friends that you have in this? Who are the people who have effective authority over you? Those people whose word has power in your decisions. That person whose word helps you find the way. There are many, maybe not, and it is not a problem for us to come to the knowledge of this truth. I have many acquaintances, but my true friends, with whom I share my life, with whom I delve into my issues, are few, but they must exist. It would be very sad if tonight we came to the conclusion that we do not have qualified relationships. We are too superficial. We have many acquaintances, but we do not have true friends. And that is the time to turn this game around. It needs a change. No one can be happy if they do not have good connections. And I say again, God misses the opportunity to pass through our lives, because what is missing is people we trust. If we do not have people whose word we trust, how is God going to speak to us? How will I have the opportunity to transform my personality, my way of being, if I don't pay attention to anyone's word? If no one has the power to speak to me, if the words of those people have no authority over me, how will God pass through those people? Many people. Even without ever having met me. Consider me a friend, and I am happy about that. Having never met me, you consider me a friend, and I am happy about that. I am happy because, in fact, our bond is born from a very fundamental element of friendship, which is trusting the word that the other person is telling me. Somehow, you started to pay attention to what I said. You started to give me credit for it. not give me the opportunity. Give me an opportunity to have some authority in your life. I am a priest. I am the bearer of the word of Jesus. And you give some credit to what I say. Is that my responsibility? Because God puts us on these paths so that we can help each other's lives. Now, I also have to have people who pass through my life and do for me what I have the opportunity to do for you. They come from all sides, my people. God passes through human paths. God acts through human paths. Human voices are capable of being the voice of God. Human loves are capable of being the love of God in our lives because God needs history to act. It is beautiful to believe in this, that the reincarnation of Jesus continues to happen among us at the moment in which we are willing to be a path of salvation for others. In the rush that I have, if I don't have my moments in this busy life that I lead, if I don't have my moment of joy with my friends, I won't be able to live everything that I need to live. Because joy strengthens us, my people. That's why happiness, joy, satisfaction, it's a very effective fuel, so that we can be a whole human being. That small, tiny opportunity that you sometimes have to eat a sandwich with a person you love, a friend, that you need to hear from them from time to time. The sandwich is just an excuse or to go out to eat something. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, no. What needs to be sophisticated is the feeling. What was it like to live with depression, and what would be its greatest pain? First of all, I needed to learn to live with melancholy. Yes, they are very similar processes, aren't they? But melancholy is not a pathology. It is not pathological. It is not a process needs to be taken care of. It needs to be assimilated, interpreted. It is part of the media. Or yes, crazy to be melancholic. But I had suicidal phases and many. Melancholy at times, it was extremely painful for me because I didn't know how to interpret it. I only realized that there was a shadow in my way of seeing the world. And this shadow remains to this day. Yes, I was never a naturally happy person. My outlook was always more melancholic, more sad. I tend to see things with pessimism. But throughout my life, I have been interpreting this as a characteristic that is not a defect. It is not a way of being. But there came a time when the melancholy became unbearable. And it was then that I realized that I was going through a process, a very present one, a process of illness, that it was a result of my choices. I always say that I ended up giving my body a very different level of care than what my soul asked of me. I have a routine. I had an extremely difficult routine. I ended up doing almost 28 shows a month for many years, and it was a much greater exposure than I could handle. In fact, I believe that depression, and also, without a doubt, panic, then all of it together, it was a construction that I didn't realize was happening. I had a sister who had a very painful death, 11 extremely difficult situation in September, and in July of that other year, I arrived in Fortaleza for a show, a big event that we have there, and Alleluia, I did the show. Then I did a sequence of 4 shows, and all of them, I was very afraid of everything and feeling that something was very disorganized. And when I got home, when the car that took me home dropped me off, I started climbing the stairs of my house. I started to cry. I kept crying, and it kept getting worse. And that week was the worst week of my life because I didn't know how to identify what was happening. Was I afraid of everything? I was. And a sadness that I couldn't contain inside me. It was then that I realized that there was something very serious going on. I sought medical help and was diagnosed with panic syndrome and depression. You understand that in the same way that I need to take medicine for my heart for high blood pressure, the brain also needs to be medicated, right? We have a lot of prejudice against medicine. It's a scam. So we can't think that it's a medicine for crazy people. No. Depression is a chemical process. It can often be triggered by a lifestyle or by an unprocessed loss, by a grief that wasn't experienced. And I had all of that. I had a lifestyle, right? And I had extremely painful losses that weren't properly processed because I didn't have time. Yes, you didn't have time to. A life-threatening event, right? And there were extremely painful losses that were not properly processed by the time I had time. Yes, you already had time to live through the morning of living. I buried my sister. And then 2 days later, along with the depression stage, singing, 2 days later I was on stage singing. I imagine that you must feel a greater pain from the weight, from the prejudice of others. But how can a priest with depression, who from a moment I became public, when people started to know me, I didn't know. Did you see a character? I was always very spontaneous, right? I was very truthful, transparent. People say I was vain, my face like taking a shower. I like to wear perfume. I cut my hair. If that's vanity, I am. And when I appeared, I was questioned a lot about a series of things. That the very construction of the priest in society generated those questions for me. I was a result of what, in some way, we culturally, over the centuries, have been portraying a priest as a very serious, very ready person who goes to the wake to offer a word of comfort. I never and never have realized that. Sometimes I went to a wake. I cried more than the family. So I never really had this thing about being ready. And I never made a point of showing myself ready for anything. I am a miserable man who makes mistakes all the time, and sometimes I make very cruel mistakes. I do the opposite of what I would like to do. I fall into the trap of my temperament. I am a victim of my temperament. I am a victim of my lack of intelligence, of my lack of lucidity. Then, everything was fine at the moment. I needed to say, people, I don't want to live. Yes, I remember that I went to Bishop. I am very impetuous, right? And the first thing I wanted was to free myself from all my responsibilities as a priest, and Dom Wilson received me. I cried a lot in front of him. I said, I don't want to go on anymore. I can't go on. I want to die. I don't want to live. So I want you to let me go today. And he was very wise. He said, yes, you have every right to want to give up, to feel everything you're feeling. But give yourself some time so that this response can be more conscious. He's right, isn't he? I think that in extremes of joy or sadness, we shouldn't make any important decisions. I saw a phrase in the Joker movie once that I thought was really, really important, right? What he said, people, the worst part of having a mental illness is that people expect you to act as if you don't have it. That's really painful, right? Really painful. And you talked about sadness and depression. Hearing something like that, right? Because sadness, there's a reason for you to be sad, right? Do you know why you're sad? So you understand you suffer because of that, and you always go back there, revisiting that reason. Depression is a sadness that sets in, right? The sadness that comes and stays and takes over and starts to stop you from doing things. I once saw a statement from a girl who was depressed, and she said, I have no desire to take my life. I have a desire to never have existed. That was very profound for me. In Fernando Pessoa's book on restlessness, he also talks about his heart. If you could think, would you stop? So, Larissa, is that what you're saying? Is it? Yes. It's very confusing in people's heads. Yes. Sometimes we want to medicate sadness, but we don't know how to medicate depression. Yes. Sadness doesn't have to be medicated. That's it. Sadness is part of life. Life, an inherent process of the human condition. Do I get sad every day? No. But every now and then I get sad, and I don't need to take medicine for it. Exactly. But when you realize that the sadness is lasting, it doesn't go away. It has almost become a routine for you. So it's time to ask for help. This aspect that you highlight is an obstacle for many people to recognize that they have depression, because it's as if one thing cancels out the other. But I'm a person of faith. Yes, I can have depression. We need to know how to differentiate things. Yes. People who have faith also have depression. Faith doesn't stop me from going through human processes, through the human imbalances that we build. Faith, can she help me to overcome? You have already been through life, who have seen much more than I have. What can I do to be happy? A very sincere question. Maybe children ask us differently. Maybe they still don't know how to formulate it like that. Mom, Dad, what do I need to be happy? Maybe even today, after we've grown up, we still don't have the courage to ask with all that clarity. We ask in other ways, right? Sometimes we ask making mistakes. Sometimes we ask, how do we do to be happy? Through our mistakes. It's interesting for us to identify that in many falls, which in many have many human blunders, there is Sada, who has a strong will already there, already very present in his personality since he was very young. Then with the son who is more submissive, So it will be much more work to be the father and mother of a child who already demonstrates these philosophical skills and this strong will, right? From a very young age, because we can kill all this entrepreneurship that sometimes this child already is inside him, who demonstrates like this. I don't want that haircut, Dad. I don't want that haircut, Mom. Respect me. It's hard, right? It's hard for those who are fathers. It's hard for those who are mothers, because we still carry those things that we suddenly learn from our parents, from our grandparents, that the child is an unfolding of you, is an extension of your body that you have the right to control as you want. Love is this ability that we have to live with difference, to equalize, speak in a harmonious way so that it doesn't happen. It's up to the parents, right? But at the same time, you feed this child that you already have a strength to show what you want, what you think. Is that healthy? That's why we try to keep alive within us this philosophical child that questions, that goes through with a fine-tooth comb rather than a sieve, everything that it sees, everything that it examines. Why am I saying this, my friends? Because we are living through 11 atypical weeks in Brazil. We are seeing it, starting with the dissatisfaction of a city like Sao Paulo, dissatisfied with a 20-cent increase in a bus fare. This has reached the proportions that it is reaching. A serious movement, of course, always as chaff among the wheat, right? That they vandals who want to destroy. But we cannot throw a movement in the trash. We can identify that what prevails, there is a desire to manifest that the child is alive inside us, that we want to question, that we are tired of living in a country where corruption prevails, where we are overloaded daily with taxes that never return to us, which would not be a problem for us to pay the taxes that we pay in Brazil as long as we had the return of this tax. No, we pay. And what do we get from what we pay? We don't have roads. If we want good roads, we have to pay the toll. If we want health, we have to pay for a good plan. If we want a good education, we have to pay for college for our children, or else our children won't be able to get into the public college. Why do we have the money to pay for private elementary and high school education that could qualify them better? In this country that launders money before our eyes all the time, this country of the Mensaleo, where people go unpunished, where crimes are time-barred, is against all of this. The 20 cents were just a tip, which showed us that we were bothered by the decisions that were made without our participation. And how beautiful it is to see the philosophical child, who questions that it was a better country, that wants to be happy, gaining shape, in a country that so often falls asleep, entertained by its carnivals, its soccer games, its mass cultures, and often without generating awareness, responsible policy that makes us want this happiness not only for ourselves but for others, because that was beautiful. Many of those protesters are speaking on behalf of those who ride the bus but don't even take a bus. Many of those protesters I call my own, taking on the suffering of those who are suffering with the increase in bus fares. I don't ride the bus, but I'm going there to show my support for those who are once again being overburdened with increases. The philosophical child that makes us think about growing, want to desire an increasingly better country. It's our turn, my people, to demonstrate to the governments. And we're not talking about a partisan dimension. No. To me, it doesn't matter if the government today is the PT, if it's the PSDB, if it's the PSB, if it's the PMDB. What we want is a government that takes care of the people. What we want is for our money to be returned for the benefit of the people themselves. What we want is a fairer country. And there, at that moment when we allow the philosophical child to take to the streets, because he decided to question, we can discover a homeland that knows how to welcome our manifestation, because we want a better world. And that is evangelical Jesus' proposal. Is it a natural path to happiness? It's not self-help, because Jesus' proposal is not magic. It's a change of mentality, as he said very well in Sao Paulo. And Father Zazinho in this song is fantastic. He puts us in perspective of and of Christianity as a way of assuming the stance of Jesus. It's thinking like Jesus thought, loving like he loved, living like he lived, feeling like he felt. It takes away the totality of our being, permeated by the feelings, thoughts, posture, and life of Jesus. Imagine if all our rulers were Christianity only for your election. Have you ever imagined if our governments, instead of seeking populist measures, only maintained an eternal power? Were they really concerned with the formation of the human being, with the training, with the life, with the conscience of these people? That's not true. That's religion. This is a responsible political dimension that all religious discourse needs to go through. The change of mentality. I cannot admit that my Christianity is a facade. Don't I have the right to go to the streets to protest against impunity, against corruption, if I promote all this corruption and impunity in smaller measures of my life? This is where Christianity touches us. This is where the philosophical child needs to act every day, at night. This philosophical child needs to take care of us. It needs to prevail against all the hypocrisies that have taken over our lives throughout the day by Ventura, and then ask us about this Christianity. If the Christianity that we practice is a Christian Christianity. Because sometimes Christianity, this name, is far from the proposal of Jesus. It is a facade. It is glitter, just fireworks that do not last long. And then the true manifestation is the one that occurs every day. When you recommit yourself to the gospel, you look at the life you have lived. Do you honestly identify where it was that you had fun or went astray? Where it was that you did not think like Jesus? Where it was that you did not act like Jesus? Where did you not love like Jesus loved? And then, do you recommit to him? This is fertile Christianity. It is the one that puts us every day in perspective of analysis and posture, of attitude, of change, of attitude. Today I will not sleep without allowing my philosophical Christian child, because I am baptized. I question myself about my choices, about what I decided to do, about everything that I allowed to be my life today, because I want to be happy. In truth, do you also want to be happy? And sometimes we are not happy. It is because we kill the child that reflects in us, that asks, why am I giving an example of the child? Because of music, and because of the indiscretion that every child has? The child is indiscreet, isn't it? She asks what many times our judgment does not allow us to ask. She is sincere. That is why Jesus said that only those who are like the children can enter the kingdom of heaven. Children. He is not talking about childishness. He is not. If he is referring to a reckless way of living, there is a childish way. Immature, right? He is talking about the purity of the heart. He is talking precisely about the lack of fences, the courage to ask and interrogate, the courage to be true, because no Christianity can be fruitful if it does not pass through the sieve of our truth. It is being true that I am living. Do I today resemble Jesus more, or is this just a speech that does not touch me? Do I today manifest, right? Because a Christian, he lives in constant manifestation. Even if I did not go out in the squares protest, our way of living has to be so coherent that it bothers. It bothers in a good way, of provoking the other or questioning. My God, it honestly humiliates. Helios, how true he is, how he does not bow to power, how he does not bow to that which is truly not in accordance with his convictions. He does not bow. There is nothing that is not in accordance with the teachings of Jesus. He does everything with great mercy, with great harmony, but he does not bow down. This is what we need, my people. It is urgent in today's Brazil, in this Brazil that protests, in this Brazil that wakes up. A Christian stance that is a constant public manifestation that we want a different world. Starting with Brazil, starting with our state, our city, our home. Do you see how the big ones? Instance. They are being particularized until they reach us, in my home, and then from my home here in my heart.